wrestle Beverly to the ground, huh?
No, I tried.
Good evening.
Hey, Andrew, this is Walter.
Walter, how are you?
You get my latest email?
Maybe. I think so. How
Uh,
late is it?
why don't you check and give me a yes or no answer?
Do not see anything recently.
Really?
Sometimes my spam filters and whatnot take a little while to proceed with messages before they send them through.
Got a phone number I can text you at?
Yes. 207-542-0139.
Coming your way.
Great.
Yes or no will do.
Okay.
Hey, Merle, welcome home. Can you amplify that in a little bit more in the text? Okay, we can discuss that at next steps. Not quite the answer I wanted. All right, John's here, I think. Can you hear me, John?
Yeah,
All right, I'm gonna call this to order. Are there adjustments to the agenda?
Walter,
Yep.
I'd like to suggest that we add scheduled meetings. I think we need to schedule an interview for our CEO LPI applicant sooner than later.
I agree. What if we, okay, want to dispense with that right now? Can we try for, we have a meeting next week, yes?
Meeting on the 10th.
Terry, how about you try for the 10th? And if not, sometime next week or even this week, where the three of us can meet with, I assume it's Brennan.
Yeah, I personally would like to do it much before the 10th. I think we have a bad situation that we need to address quickly.
Okay.
I was thinking, it can be a day meeting perhaps, but.
Okay. Did you get that, Terry?
As soon as possible.
Yeah, and if Jan and John and I will at the end of tonight send you our available blocks of times and dates.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, public comment for items not on the agenda. Hearing none. Okay, so item 4, opening statements. Jan, I think we're going to give you the floor, probably for your final interaction with this group before you ride off into the sunset. Hi, Christy. I see her behind you.
Yeah, thank you, Walter. Thanks. I just, before we move into the engineer's review of the 70%, I want to kind of formally, on the record, express my regret, I guess, for the tone of the emails that occurred over the weekend. I know not everyone is purview to them, but I was out of town for a couple of days and then had family here for the weekend. So several days went by before I looked at some of them. And I guess I was surprised, at some of the public comments regarding this meeting. Clearly there's a few residents that are still have serious trust issues and questions regarding this project. And personally, I was surprised by it and didn't really understand it. I thought that over several meetings that we had heard the concerns of the residents and the neighbors. We'd made several adjustments to the plans accordingly. The engineer had reviewed the plans, and the 75% drawings were the result of their inputs. I think what they're going to see tonight and have seen already. So I was a little confused by some of the distrust and some of the tone. We didn't make this project up. Just to go back as one of the old selectmen who was involved from the beginning with this, this was a project that came to us, by a significant study by very reputable organizations. The Woods Environmental in Portland and the Island Institute hosted a meeting at the Island Institute now probably 2 years ago, and presented to us, the town, the vulnerability of some of our shoreland infrastructure, and Island Road was one of those that had stood out. And of course, Island Road, if you're a longtime resident, many of us have seen Island Road, either flood or had storm wash or at various times. So we proceeded, based on that study, to hire what we thought was a pretty reputable engineering firm that has significant experience in this type of work that we had dealt with as a town before. The firm, reworked that design several times, after meeting with neighbors and addressing and hearing their concerns. The select board moved ahead in order to save the town taxpayer money and went after 2 grants, fairly sizable grants that made this project very affordable. We were even able to delay the paving of Island Road and the money set aside for that to put toward the project, which made sense if we were going to tear a portion of Island Road up anyway. And we've been studying and designing this project for almost 2 years. I'm not surprised, but at the same time, the costs of the construction project have gone up. And each time we've, of course, asked our engineer to go back and change the design or update the study, there's been costs associated with that. So, we've seen, a little under $10,000 in kind of engineering work, some of which isn't completed yet. And we're looking at probably $40,000 to $50,000 in increased cost of the project. So the delays are hurting us. But at the same time, I thought it was important that we address them. And in the end, of course, I think that it will be very sad if this project doesn't go forward, and a few residents and neighbors are able to derail it, and we will lose all that time and all the money that we've spent, only to find that we're going to have to do this project at some future date with sea level rise, and the cost is going to be even more. And we may not be fortunate enough to have grant money involved. So I feel, I guess, as one of the, even though I'm a lame duck, I guess, one of the town leaders that I found that it would be irresponsible, not to move this project forward. So I hope that tonight we can resolve those last few concerns and move forward. We need to get this to bid and get it done. So anyway, my thoughts, and thank you.
Thanks, Jan. I have my own historical perspective that I want to share because it's going to guide my initial instructions to Andrew. In 2018, there were two significant storms impacting the South Thomaston shore. One particularly violent one caused inundation of the low road area right before the bridge to the island. It got a lot of play because one of the neighbors there put it up on Facebook for many of us to see. And in short order, the EMS director, Betty Thomas, came to the select board with concerns about possible washout and delayed access to the island, especially for emergency vehicles. She's also armed because of her connections with FEMA and the region with all the NOAA information that says that Atlantic storms are increasing in frequency and ferocity. Now, there's been a lot of this and that about sea level rise. The fact is that Arctic Council told us, the Camden Conference, that we're going to have a 2-meter sea level rise before 2050. So that's 6 feet. We're not trying to be King Canute here and beat back the sea. Those are problems for another day. But the select board is extremely sensitive to anything that impacts ambulance service, especially. We are in the top 5 in terms of aging population. And in 2016, we had 141 ambulance calls. In 2019, we had 284. We had a drop off in 2020 because of COVID, but as we come out of COVID, we're going back on track to that 284 plus level. Again, the priority that we set was to take some steps towards reducing the risk of storms impeding emergency vehicle access. And Betty, joined later by Owen Casas, located 2 grant sources, which would enable some positive renovations that the town would not likely be able to afford on its own. So Jan covered some of that early planning. And one of the things that came out of the meeting, the public meeting at the Spruce Head Community Center, was people raised the issue of the intersection between Island Road and Village Road is not exactly something that you designed today. And I have a little war story. The prior board, when it was dealing with this gig bridge and the reconstruction down at the town landing, pleaded with DOT to put a traffic light in at the intersection of Dublin Road and Elm Street, which DOT refused because there's not enough traffic. So they put in the crosswalks and the flashers and the islands. And one of our, dare I call them, less insightful citizens got up and said, "This is all a big waste because nobody's been killed yet." Well, I drive down that intersection every once in a while and have had to gun my engine to get out of the way of somebody barreling down the hill. All I could think of was, oh, well, let's not do anything to that intersection because nobody's been killed yet. That doesn't fit my modus operandi. Now where we are today, and we also have backed off from blasting the ledge as part of reducing the curvature of the road in front of the lobster pound, and made a number of other adjustments. And where we are today, as Jan mentioned, we're on a tight time frame. with every delay, costs are going to go up and our affordability case is going to start to fall apart. So I'm losing patience, just so you know. So Andrew, what I'd like you to focus on right now is to
I have some-
address,
I have
Yes.
some comments, Walter,
okay, go ahead.
just very briefly. You guys covered a lot of what I probably would have said, so I won't repeat it, but I do think we have some revised cost estimates, and when we get to, and I think a large part of that is driven by the fact of, the revisions and that type of thing, which I think are a good thing. I think we have a much better plan than we did originally. But I do think that when we get to the discussion on the revised plans, we definitely need to factor that into our discussion under item 7. So that's all I have at this point.
Okay, all right, so I mentioned, Andrew, what I'd like you to do is the top 2 priorities of this project are to raise the road in those spots. So I'd like you to start by taking us through how this plan achieves that objective.
Certainly. Would you like me to share the screen?
Yes,
I hope you're blocked. Are you muted?
Terry, somebody's not muted and I'm getting background noise.
yeah, Terry, would you mute everybody except Andrew?
Yep, hold on. I just put us all into a little corner. Can't get us back.
I think she needs to, she muted everybody except for me. And she needs to give me the ability to share my screen.
How do I do that, Andrew?
I think it's right down there in the share screen options. I think you can right click down there and do it from that section. You can also, I believe, do it. Let's see. Yep, there we go. So just in brief summary, my name is Andrew Hedrick. I am a civil engineer from Gartley and Dorsey Engineering and Surveying, located in Camden. I've been helping with this project for a few years. Just to kind of go back and give you the very brief involvement on my end. Before any of this even started, Betty reached out to us in a cold winter afternoon, all the way back in January or February of 2019, knowing that the road was an issue, knowing that there had been recent problems out there surrounding, overtopping, erosion, and whatnot for storm events, that she wanted us to get involved to look at the road situation with her, which we did. We met out there on some very cold days, actually, looked at the road, and then helped her assess and come up with at least the ballpark cost estimate back in February of 2019. And then from there, in brief summary, they then went and found the Wood engineers to give them the true story on the reports, to create the assessment and do the vulnerability assessment and make their recommendations. And then the project went out to bid for engineers to provide and respond to the RFP, to provide engineering guidance and assistance, which we responded to, and ultimately were awarded this project. So in brief summary, here's the 2 sections. We have now created a 75% progress set. So what that means is we pretty much nailed down where we would like the road to be located based on the plans, but we do have time and availability, if you will, remaining to make some final adjustments to kind of refine things and tighten things up along the edges. So these are not 100% construction ready right now. They are probably suitable for permitting, which would need to happen and be sent out shortly after this progress set if we want to stay on time or have a hope to get this project moving. but permits have not been sent out. We are waiting until we have this meeting to make sure we're all on board and moving forward. So in summary, the goals were to stabilize the road and to improve the road elevation. So this is the Island Road, Village Road intersection that we've talked about extensively. But now the plan difference is you can see the actual real limit of the proposed improvements, as well as the stabilization along the side roads and where we are proposing for the elevation. So down here is what everybody was looking for previously. This is our plan and profile. This shows the center line of the road and its current proposed elevation. So you can basically look at this road up here and draw a line almost straight down, and it'll line up with the center line elevations. So kind of picking this low spot we have along Island Road, there's this 9.1 existing grade elevation, and we're proposing to raise it all the way up to elevation 12. So if we go up to this line up here, keep switching the good old PDFs. Now right here is that location. So here's where the elevation, the 12 contour is, but that's the station we were just looking at. So right here, we're raising the road about 3 feet, which in turn necessitates kind of reworking this intersection and trying to elevate that, because knowing that we would have to impact this area to regrade and be able to raise the road to meet that 3 feet in elevation. So we did that for this section of the road, and kind of skipping ahead just to show you what a typical cross section of these roads will look like. So this is what we've come up with and what we'd like to propose. So we have a 22-foot wide road. We're raising the entire road system up. And when we raise the road up, we're going to reclaim the road, meaning we're going to grind up all the asphalt. We're going to place some geotechnical fabric down, and then we're going to stabilize the side slopes with an extensive amount of riprap, large riprap, quite honestly. So our details on this, I'm not a big fan of how we've got this detailed. This isn't our final result. Quite honestly, we simply just wanted to get the idea on the plan, but ultimately we're going to have a large keystone. So there'll be a large base stone that'll be put in the ground out there. That'll be about 3 feet in diameter. We're going to bury it a couple of feet deep below the road elevation. And then we're going to build large riprap up. So when we say D50, basically that's the weight. So most of the rocks, 50% of the rocks will be 24 inches or larger along the side slopes. So it will look similar to what's there now. I think the riprap in these locations along the edge is that 18 to 24 inches. So what we are going to propose to do is fill this area here with the riprap. We have a little bit more to fill down here, quite honestly, but we're going to fill this area along the side slopes with riprap. We're going to armor this with riprap as well. So in the event that the road is overtopped, because we know from the wood study, the environmental infrastructure solutions incorporated there, they have indicated that the short-term plan says that the sea level rise and the tidal action and whatnot can be up to 4 feet for that mid-storm, if you will. So what we're proposing to do is raise it 3 feet in the middle, armor the sides, and improve the drainage. Right now, there's a drainage pipe that runs somewhere between here, and then there's really no outlet or inlet to it. So what we're proposing to do is we're going to put a new pipe in on this section. So in the event that the water road is overtopped through this area, it'll be able to drain out of this section, and then the side slopes and whatnot will be stabilized so that they can handle a little bit of wave action and the water kind of filling over. And they'll also be able to drain free after the surge and the storm surges leave. So moving on to the next section, it's a lot of the same stuff. Some of the changes that have occurred since we originally went through this is here's that big, large ledge that's exposed. We have completely avoided that by pulling off it as much as we could, maintaining the curvature of the road. Actually, we've increased the curvature of the road, which I think will help slow some traffic down potentially. But we have done the same thing here. We're proposing, so if we look at station 4 here, we're right down the sheet. We're proposing to raise the road in that specific station a little under 1.5 feet. And then some other areas we're closer to 2 feet, 2 feet on this lower section, 1 foot down that lower section. So we can get this low section up, which is here's the lowest section of the road. So we're doing the same thing. We're going to raise this section of road up to about elevation 12 in the low point. And there's our 12 contour. You can kind of see it running through there now. and doing the same thing along the side slopes. We're planning on armoring those side slopes with riprap in the same manner that we talked about for the other section of the road. So this will be large angular riprap. Behind that riprap will be some blasted ledge, and all that will be wrapped. In fact, we're going to bring the fabric up and underneath right to the edge of the pavement. So the only exposed material will be the side slope of that road, basically the little gravel shoulder that we put in place out there. And the hope is eventually over time that'll kind of grass in and weed in, and it'll become a little more resilient. But the worst case scenario is you get a large storm surge through here, your road, your pavement, the side slopes will all stay in place. And what might happen is you get a little bit of erosion of this shoulder. In those circumstances, that can be easily maintained and repaired as needed. These are areas that we need to work beyond the prescribed right of way, and they're essentially to tie the driveways back into the proposed road. Again, because we're raising the road a couple of feet in elevation through these areas, we need to tie these driveways into that so that we don't have basically a ski ramp at the end of them, so they're not very steep. So all these driveways here, this one we had anticipated impacting, so you can kind of see where the final impacts are. We'd have to raise that driveway up as it slopes off the road. Right now it's pretty flat, but you can see we're going to be at elevation 12 in this location, and previously it was at about 9.5. So to be able to taper down to the driveway gently, we need to impact it. And the same is true for these other two driveways. Essentially what we've tried to do is make 12 the low spot along this road. You can see that down here in this road profile, that we're going to run the road virtually flat through that section to avoid and minimize the fill. But that doesn't mean the surface is going to be flat. So you can super elevate the surface, and that's what we're planning to do. You can see how our roads are sloping one way or the other, and that'll help shed the water and make sure that you can maintain the road, and it won't be a big flat road out there, but it will be flat in elevation through that section. So by not making that flat, it started continuing further up the road. So we tried to minimize the impact once we got to that elevation 12, which was kind of our goal that we had for this road, based on the recommendations that the Wood Environmental Infrastructure recommended. For this section, they recommended we raise the road 2 feet in the very minimum, improve drainage, and stabilize the side slope. So that's exactly what we've done. We've raised the road 2 feet. We're putting in a lot of riprap and stabilization. We're picking up a couple of culverts on this side to allow the water to drain out. Again, in the event that the road is overtopped and we get water from both sides, we have an outlet for the water to drain. We are proposing to put some under drain along the edge of the road here to help dry that area up in between the ledge and to pick up anything in those locations. We'll probably have to do a lot of field adjustment with that because we're mandating that there won't be any ledge removed with hammers or blasting. So we can look at the depth we can get that potentially. But with the understanding that we're already raising the road 1 foot to 1.5 foot in these areas, we should have plenty of soil depth there to put an under drain along the edge here. Here's the lobster pound entrance. What we're proposing to do on that is we need to remove a little bit of asphalt. So the road in that location is about 6 inches high. So what we're doing is we're actually carving the pavement down by the lobster pound to that section. So here it is. The dashed line is the existing grade. The red line is the center line, the proposed center line elevation. So as we go up the sheet, that's right in this area. We're proposing to kind of shade that down, and then we're going to grind down a little bit of pavement just to help them with the transition of the hump that's on the edge, and to allow this to be a nice blended, easier to maintain, easier to access for everybody along this stretch of the road there, and not worry about the odd hump that's been created by over paving over years. So in summary, I believe we've met the goals that Wood put forward: raising the road, stabilizing the side slopes, and providing drainage to improve the existing conditions while implementing or listening to everybody in the public, trying to minimize impacts, trying to keep the cost down as much as possible, and definitely avoiding the ledge alterations. And I know there's been a bit with this intersection at Village Road, but we tried to maintain a nice wide open sweep while giving a car an adequate place to stop and see up the island road without kind of migrating down to the old intersection that had an opening way down here. But as far as changes go, and as far as they were alluded to, the unit pricing and costing, we went through this and we did a revised cost estimate for this project. The costs have gone up. Originally, we included a 20% contingency trying to accommodate for changes and whatnot. But again, a couple of years has gone by, and when we originally provided that cost estimate, like I said earlier, it was back in January or February of 2019. Prior to anything other than using Google Earth to look at the site, walking it with Betty and listening to the town on what they wanted to do or what they thought they wanted to do out there for improvement. So while the design has changed, while we saved a bunch of money from avoiding ledge removal, unit pricing has definitely gone up over the last year. This year, especially with COVID, contractors are extremely busy. So pricing has kind of jumped up 10 or 20% to deal with that. Another item that I've seen go up significantly is flagging costs. Flaggers are now getting paid more than they used to be. And you have to have 3 of them on site, and a lot of times, and with the case of the village road, I suspect they may even need up to 4 flaggers on site down there to make that happen. So you end up paying for 4 flaggers for a full day. So I've tried to accommodate some of those things I've seen recently. And then the other changes were the amount of riprap that we ended up placing along the edge of the roads. The quantities were higher than I originally estimated. So they have gone up, probably on a whole about the 10%. I think my original estimate for the project was somewhere in the 385 range was what I recommended. I gave a range of about $360,000 to $385,000 for construction. And my construction estimate this time around is $403,000 and some change. I was able to reduce the contingency now that we have some design plans done, so that helped kind of keep those numbers down. And the other big thing that changed, I forgot to mention, is that when I originally estimated this road, I used a 20-foot road width based on, again, measurements I took from Google Earth, trying to estimate what the road was out through there. And the sections of road that we're actually working are closer to 22 feet. So it kind of bumps up the asphalt number when you actually get to doing a real construction estimate. And just as a clarity, we use construction estimates, or all our construction estimates are based on unit prices that are provided to us by contractors whenever they bid projects. Those are all subject to change. They do change rapidly, unfortunately. From one project to the next without any rhyme or reason, primarily due to contractor availability. But we do our best. We keep track of all the numbers we receive on various projects for bid. And in fact, I have spreadsheets upon spreadsheets of these numbers, and I usually try to utilize them whenever we do projects and make sure that they're updated and make sure they're current, so that our cost estimates can be as close as possible for these systems. But other than that, like I said, I have the plan set here, and I'll gladly answer any more questions. Again, I do believe we've met the objective of the wood engineer's recommendations, and we still have some time and availability. If there's some things that jump out here, that's what this process is all about: is to review where we currently stand, review the designs a little more complete. You can see on these plans, we actually show contours. That's what these red lines are. That's where they're going to tie in. It shows where the limit of work is, essentially. And we're trying to tie in as close as possible so that we minimize impact and we stay within the right of way. So we do have some time to make some subtle adjustments here, and we'll gladly hear what everybody has to say. I did want to point this out. This was some concern here now that I'm looking at it. So here's the proposed guardrail along the edge. This is that little grassed area or a little dirt. It's road right now. But I know there was some concern that we create a park here, but ultimately you can see, so each one of these contours is 1 foot. So in this section, you're going to be dropping 2.5, 3 feet by the time we get down to that area. And in between there, it's all going to be armored and riprap. So it's not going to be an inviting location for somebody to pull off. They won't even actually be able to get by the guardrail to pull off and picnic in that area. So it'll kind of deter them, keep them moving, and it'll stabilize the edge of the road here. So in the event that water does come up in here, this road base will be protected.
Andrew,
Yes.
what I'm going to do here is I have a couple questions, then I'm going to let the board go, and then we'll do some comments from the community, and I want to limit those to about 2 minutes each. What are the most likely and costly gotchas?
As far as what could possibly come up?
Yep.
Ledge. Ledge is always the most likely. And it will be along this area, but I believe what we've done to look at this is we have systems that are flexible and we can adjust things and try to pull them out. And then the other thing is along the existing riprap, that might be the other gotcha is if we start digging in both locations along this edge and along the pond and find the riprap behind the existing riprap is insufficient, and we wouldn't recommend that. And we end up having to kind of peel another layer or two of this riprap off the top here to kind of further stabilize it so that the whole system works. So we've looked at it. There's some large rocks in place, but until you start digging in behind, there could be stuff hidden in there that's just garbage in behind that. So in that event, what we'd recommend doing is kind of pulling this down a little bit further, adding another course of large stone and making sure that we're stable and we don't undermine the road.
Okay, and my next other question is, if the affordability case really becomes awful, what scope reductions can we do without really distracting from the overall the top priority objective?
Yeah, so that's a little more challenging. The two things that I've been thinking about with this project, so we're calling for a significant amount of riprap along the edge of these roads. And one of the things that could be done is we could work to achieve a vegetative measure along this edge, which would require a geotextile fabric that would be anchored down. And then we would try to vegetate the edges. The downfall of that is it doesn't secure and stabilize the road as much as a riprap, and it's susceptible to wave action. And it's not an ideal solution, but it would give the town the ability, because we're talking about future and long-term planning here. It would give the town the ability to armor this with like a Curlex geotextile fabric that doesn't degrade, stabilize it with vegetation, and then at a later date, if budget's allowed, you could come back and add riprap and re-armor the side slope of the road in some of these locations. The other thing you could do is you could peel a little bit of asphalt back. We proposed 4 inches of asphalt. For a road like this, that's what I would recommend. You could put down, say, 3.5 inches of asphalt, or put down, 3 inches at this time with a plan to come back and put another inch on it at a later date. We've tried to minimize the length of the proposed improvements. I know it looks like we're well beyond where we originally had talked, but if you actually look at the profile down below here, a lot of this first, 50, 75 feet is not really impact at all. We're just going to grind that first section down and then start rebuilding the road. So we have tried to keep that as tight as possible. I would recommend you do each of these projects entirely. And if you were fighting for budgetary purposes, you could potentially pick one of these off and do one at one time and one at another time and separate them and kind of attack them systematically. But I would think that with the contractors on board, being just down the road from each other, you're going to get quite a benefit in the cost savings to have them work them simultaneously or concurrently, if you will. But again, with COVID pricing and everything out there right now, it's pretty wild to try to assume you're going to get discounts on anything.
Okay, John. Yeah, I'm going to call on John and Jan, and then we'll do the hand raise trick. John.
John, you're muted. Can you adjust your camera so we can see you? All we see is the top of your head. Thanks.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah, it's hard to see the screen when I turn it up so you can see me. So Andrew, are you confident that the contingencies that you're carrying in your revised cost estimates are sufficient to cover those so-called gotchas that you and Walter just discussed is my first question.
Generally speaking, that's what I recommend towns carry for contingencies on town projects. So you never can tell, and it's better than none, is what I say. So trying to carry a 10% contingency on these construction prices for a project like this, I mean, we're talking a $40,000. Well, it's right there. Where is it? Oh, I just lost it. It's like $40,000 and some change for this project. So it is a pretty substantial number. It should give you $40,000 is a lot of work. And as long as you bid it properly and you get unit pricing, so there's no surprising on that. So meaning the contract will provide you with unit pricing. So if there has to be a change, you'll have a unit price to assess to a change order rather than them being able to make up a unit price on the spot. So I think we have a pretty good handle on that, but again, I can't stand by it and say, absolutely, that'll be all you have. All I can recommend is that's what we recommend for town projects and projects of this nature. Road projects is 10%. A lot of times the contingency is never used. And sometimes you run into problem after problem and the contingencies run dry.
Then my other question, I have several questions or comments when we get into future actions, but at this point, I'm limiting it to sort of technical questions. The current plans continue, other than the driveway tie-ins, the current plans continue to be completely inside the existing right-of-way. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes. Other than the tie-ins. Yes.
Right.
And again, it's in the prescribed or perceived right of way because there's no truly defined one through that section.
I understand that under the lost boundary statute.
Correct.
Okay. And then it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that you are not anticipating any subsurface excavation. It's simply a matter of grinding down the existing road, putting down the textile fabric, and then bringing fill in on top of that. Is that correct?
Exactly. Absolutely. That's the plan. The only time we're going to be subsurface is for drainage pipes. And in those locations, and there's nothing that we have to hold firm. In fact, I just had to do this out in Deer Moscato. We started digging, and in the trench we found ledge. So we had to shift the pipe and move it and do some elevation adjustments so we avoided removing the ledge.
Okay, that's all I have at this point. When we get to futures, I do want to talk about more budget and bidding and that type of stuff.
Jan,
Yeah, thank you, Walter. I really have no further questions. I think I appreciate, Andrew, your thoroughness and your brief, and I've studied the plans myself, so I'm satisfied with what you've got here.
so John has his yellow hand up, which I appreciate. Terry, you can let him enter and sign in, please.
Could you take the screen down from the engineer, please? Okay, thank you. So I do have a question about the cost numbers that came up. I believe he said 403,000. And I believe he said that that is a construction cost that does it or does it not include the engineering cost? And does it include a contingency?
I'll answer that. It does not include the engineering costs, and it does include the contingency.
Okay, so we are currently over budget by your estimate.
Yes, I believe we are.
Okay, and I would like the board to address whether or not this project has been approved and when it was approved and how.
The project was budgeted for. And let me answer one of your questions. We didn't do a separate warrant article because it was included in the 2020 budget, wasn't a borrowing. And if you go back to, well, let's see, where do I start? If you go back to the details of the 2020 budget in addendum 4 or addendum 1, all of the costs, the grant, the Borders grant, the Island Road grant, the Island Institute grant, the use of the paving reserve, the use of the EMS reserve, and the $31,000 appropriation that we asked for from the town were all included in the budget. On January 29th, the budget committee met and did a preliminary approval after crawling through all of this. If you think that Jeff Northgraves and Moira Paddock let us throw any spitballs or curveballs by them, you got another thing coming, because they don't. And one of the things that they did was to extract from various places where those funds were sitting and roll them all into the town road budget. And then they ratified that budget on February 1st, 2020. And that's what went before the town for appropriation and approval. And I do want to emphasize that the only impact on the taxpayers was the $31,000 that they appropriated, which amounted to 11.5 cents on the $15.35 tax bill that our tax rate that people paid last year.
Walter, could you please comment on the fact that the plans were 50% longer? The June 9th plans were 50% greater length than the budget, basically.
Yeah, I can't comment on that because I haven't really delved into that. I saw your write-up on that, and I have been out of pocket, so.
You mean you're gonna pay for the difference, but no,
Can I respond to that?
please.
Yes, Andrew.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we created that estimate back in 2019, we basically estimated the road and the length of the road that was improved, again, using Google Earth, plain and simple. We measured the area, we looked at that, and tried to estimate where it was. Then when we actually got designs, real road distances, real elevations, we reassessed and we adjusted the project to meet the needs. So we're really targeting an elevation 12 or 13 in some of those areas. And that's what dictates the length of this project. And again, I mentioned the fact that the road project looks absorbently long, but if you take off 100 feet or 150 feet from either end of that or total from each section, you realize all we're doing in those areas is grinding the road down so that we can overlay the pavement properly. So it's not like we're cutting that entire length of road there.
Andrew, the plans from June 9th that were based on a survey, not Google Earth, were 1,250 feet long. And the town meeting adopted a budget that only, the budget that went before the town only would improve 800 feet. So the plans and the budget did not match. The budget that went before the town was insufficient to build the project. It's plain and simple. 1,250 feet does not compute to an 800-foot budget.
Again, the estimates that we put together back in 2019, what the project is based on, that's what those numbers are from 2019. An estimate hasn't been produced until recently, and we're very close to 10% off. I mean, we've seen 20% price increases from contractors. I wouldn't get hung up on the actual length of road. If you actually look at a plan and determine what actually happens, where we are arbitrarily putting lines on plans saying, okay, we're going to be from here to this section. There were no designs, there were no profiles created at that point in time. They were simply schematic. I think we said that in multiple plans, multiple meetings, that we were just trying to get a handle on where the road was going to be, where it was going to finish. And until you actually take the time to create a profile and do cross sections and determine where the length and the height of the road is going to be, you can't determine where it's going to end. So unfortunately, the literature actually says it ends up being a little bit longer. But ultimately, I think we've been able to keep the budget constrained for even adding the additional length to milling and doing a little bit of road repairs.
Jan?
Yeah, just a comment. I think where John may be confusing it is we initially, when we went after the grants, particularly the Borders grant, we had to come up with some, what I would call back of the envelope estimates. I mean, we had to put some dollars out there, otherwise the grant you couldn't put the grant together. So I know it's kind of a cart before the horse, but you couldn't do the engineering until we had the grant, and you couldn't do, the grant without some estimates. So we asked Andrew early on to sort of give us some, some of his best judgment figures on this. But they weren't by any means designs or, kind of building plans like we've got now.
But I'm asking if he had a professional responsibility at the time of the town meeting to revise his estimate, given that his plan was 50% longer than the original budget. It's pretty simple arithmetic to say that we cannot do this project at 1,200 feet for $420,000. We've got to have $630,000. And that was his responsibility and the board's responsibility to understand that the project, as designed and presented to the town on June 9th, was not financeable for $840,000. And that's all I'm going to say.
Well, that may be true, John, in your estimation, but to be honest with you, that's not what the plan is today. So I think we've got adequate resources, with the exception of some normal inflation growth, to do this project within the budget that's already been approved, the grants that have already been received.
I understand that there have been adjustments and they were intelligent, but there have been a number of statements about how this project is fully approved and was overwhelmingly approved at the time of the town meeting, which it was there were procedural errors made.
Well, those designs or those drawings, which again were preliminary drawings, were available at the town meeting for people to look at. So I don't think there was any intent to mislead anybody. We've refined that plan significantly since then. I think that's what's reflected today.
I'm not saying there was an intent to mislead, but it was not procedurally correct, and it could have been professionally re-estimated, and the town is not getting 1,200 feet of road that it assumed that it was going to get at the time of the supposed approval. So has it been approved or has it not?
Well, again, I guess I take exception to whatever you're referring to as procedural, but in my mind, it's certainly been approved, and the town is getting, what we shot for, which is what Andrew just outlined, the elevation we wanted, the additional riprap to improve the stability of the road. Those were the things that we were after in answer to the study. The distance wasn't an issue. That was not something, we weren't going into the town and saying, oh, we want 1,200 feet of road or 800 feet of road. What we wanted was the right elevation, and then to blend that elevation in with the existing road structure. So, I mean, I hear what you're saying about procedure, but I don't agree with it. I don't follow it.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Julia?
Julia, you're not
Muted.
muted.
Larry, unmute her if she can't do it herself.
No, I did.
Okay.
I think I figured it out. Thank you for making the plans available. They are a little hard to read, but I've gone through them and I have some small scale comments that perhaps could be addressed. And Andrew, I was really pleased to hear you mention the notion of geotextile fabric and vegetation solutions, because there is an awful lot of riprap in these drawings. And if it is feasible to do a geotextile and vegetation approach, I would be, for one, delighted to see that happen. Going just page by page for a second through the drawings. On drawing C1, you don't suggest locating and removing the drain pipe that apparently runs from the Ilvanen side of the road to the beach. There's not a note to locate and remove, as best I can figure out. Oh, no, I'm sorry. There is. There is. I misread my note there. Recently, in the past couple of days, there has been work along the road to pull back the vegetation along the curve here and expose the guardrail. I assume the town did it. I don't know why or how, but that guardrail strip is now pretty clearly exposed. And I suspect you'll need to replace more guardrail along that stretch than you may have thought in the beginning. It also exposed a whole lot of large concrete blocks along there. And I wonder if you're going to need a note about removing, relocating, replacing, whatever, those, not concrete blocks, that's a city comment, granite blocks, because we're here. They're big granite blocks, and they aren't addressed in the notes at all. And I thought you might need to. On page C2, I couldn't find the guardrail on the plan along by where it says Christopher Nolan and Mary Kay Nolan, along the Lobster Pound Pond. The guardrail didn't seem to be shown on the plans, and there didn't seem to be a note about removing it. On that same page, there is the note that says the ledge may not be removed by blasting, hammering, etc. But then it continues, field adjustment will be made if subsurface ledge is encountered. And that's a note that I think disturbs some of us. We welcomed and appreciated, and you all reiterated it just now, that there would not be ledge removal in that area. And the field adjustments will be made if subsurface ledge is encountered is a disturbing addendum to what's a happy phrase, which says the ledge won't be blasted or hammered. Can you adjust that note? And that note points to an area that I think is not where the ledge is sticking out, but rather should probably point to that little nose of ledge that's by Point View Road. On Plan C3, this is where you have a new drainage pipe going from the Huey-Dunks Point property out to the shoreline, but you don't seem to replace the drain under the road and over to the Ilvanen side of the property. Have you decided to take out that drainage for some reason? Anyhow, that's a question. Sometimes your shoulders are shown as 3 foot gravel, and sometimes they're shown as 1 foot. And there seem to be inconsistencies along the way. I myself would be delighted to see this road be nearer 20 or 21 feet. and not the full 22. And I'd be delighted to see it with a 2-foot gravel shoulder rather than a 3-foot gravel shoulder. I wondered if that was possible. Again, shaving this down to a sort of minimal level. I also was curious as to what, and it shows up on page C5. I was curious as to what blasted ledge is. Is that that's in the spec? I assume it's not locally blasted ledge. Is that a phrase that refers to a type of fill or underlayment? It would just be nice if these plans didn't mention the words blasted ledge. And this again is where the gravel shoulders are shown at different widths. And it would be nice if they could be kept smaller. The on page C6, do you you show what seems to be the white stop line, but there's no mention of fog lines or center lines. And that may happen somewhere else in your specs, and I just don't know where that is or what that is. And then for the riprap, while I'd really love to see the geotextile approach, does this riprap as shown indicate placed stones rather than dumped stones? And is that what you're thinking of, which frankly is nicer than dumped stone? I think the placed stone is a little less offensive, but in places like the wetlands near Gene Goodman's and along most of the Island Road down by the Cove, a vegetated solution would be a much happier solution. And I guess those are, other than the fact that you spelled Carl Ilvenen's name incorrectly on page V1, those were my sort of picky comments, but some of them I think are significant enough in terms of the overall effort to minimize the impact of the project that they were worth raising. So thank you.
Yeah, certainly. I was taking some notes. I'll try to respond and hit on all of them. But starting right with the vegetative approach, unfortunately, with the wave action and the tides in the situation and what we're planning for and trying to stabilize that road, a vegetative solution is not a permanent solution in these locations where the road would be overtopped and we'd have wave action on the side. Armoring those and getting a geotextile to replace riprap, especially the substantial side that we're going to need because they are in flood zones and there could be significant wave action. As I suggested, it could be done as a temporary measure with the anticipation you would need to maintain it. But the riprap is really the only solution for that. So we have called out a specific length of guardrail at this point in time. We'll have a unit price in our bid set so that if in the event that some of this guardrail needs to be replaced, right now we're showing new guardrail extending from this point all the way down around the corner to this point. If there's an additional guardrail that will need to be reset, we can handle it one of two ways. You can delay on fixing it and deal with it at a separate project, or you can have the contractor proceed to use it. And that's where a lot of those contingencies numbers will get kind of used in a project for that. With regards to the granite block, a lot of that stuff, if something is uncovered today, tomorrow, or during construction, those are things you make field adjustments to. And my use of the word field adjustment is just that. It usually involves an engineer on site, a town member on site, and we make a determination on how to field adjust, meaning how we're going to adjust the project to meet the field conditions, not remove the ledge in the field. So just to be clear on that, I understand the note is not very clear. And to be honest, when we do construction plans like this, I know I keep using the excuse the plans aren't done, but when we do plans like this, it's the last thing that gets adjusted are some of these notes and pointing to the right place. Yes, absolutely, I agree. We should have that leader pointed over there. But field adjustment, I can eliminate that and say contact engineer for review, and it'll be not field adjusted by the contractor. It'll be field adjusted by the engineer in the town. I think that can help things. But the intent of that note, just so it's very clear, is as we run drainage through this section, there may be a point where we will run into ledge for the under drain. And in that event, we can change the slope of the pipe, do something creative to get it around and by the ledge without having to impact that. That was the intent of that note, not to try to brush something or say we're going to adjust it no matter what. So no ledge is going to be blasted. No ledge is going to be hammered. That's been key from the start of this project after we got going, and that'll be maintained. I don't see any reason why we will need to blast ledge if we run into a situation where the pipe doesn't fit and we need to put and we want to put it in there and there's ledge in the way. Then we'll have an assessment on, okay, how do we do this? What are we going to give up? Where are we going to move that pipe to? Because we can put pipes underneath the road and accomplish the same thing. So we have a lot of flexibility there to avoid the necessity to remove ledge. So please be reassured there's no underlying goal to alter the ledge. Yes, this culvert is indeed going away. We're not sure, quite honestly, and we show it two different ways. We're not sure the culvert actually discharges to the middle. We believe it comes through. We've seen an outlet, I think, over here, or maybe a piece on this side, but we couldn't really find all of the pipe. We couldn't find anything in this island. So the way we show it kind of broken, the way it is, it's speculative. It may run from here straight over. But ultimately, the problem is you have a low spot in the road here, and you have to drain water out. So whether it goes this way or that way is irrelevant. Ultimately, the quickest path to the ocean is this way. So that's why we eliminated this pipe. We didn't feel it was necessary. So we basically just elected to put one large pipe in this side, and it'll drain out to the ocean rather than alter that. The shoulders do indeed alter. I think our details show that. We say 1 to 3 feet on different sections. But as we run through this, and I think I've got them labeled, the goal is to have a 3-foot shoulder along this section. That's what DOT will want. That's what the design guidelines require. Again, as I've said, we have the ability to definitely narrow those up, which is exactly what we did in the section down by the pound. We reduced those to 2-foot wide shoulders to try to minimize the footprint and be able to fit everything in a little bit better. The 1-foot wide shoulders occur basically along this edge here where it tapers down, and we have a combination of riprap and whatnot, again up in this section as we taper down just in front of the guardrail, trying to maximize the amount of riprap we can get in there for that section. Blasted ledge is an engineered term, and it is just that. Pits and quarries, they actually will blast large rock and blast ledge, but the intent is it's an angular rock that locks together. So when you're putting riprap out, especially the blasted ledge, which we call for on sheet, a bunch of these locations, we call for the blasted ledge in this location here. Sorry, I'm frozen. I moved my bar. So in this location here is where we call for that blasted ledge to be placed. Maybe I've got one to actually call it right here, a blasted ledge. So that's just intended to be an angular large rock that's in behind the hand-placed face stone. So we're still refining this detail. I'm not a fan. I don't even like how they're stacked in here. It's not quite right, quite honestly, but we ran out of time, and I couldn't get our drafter to tweak these quick enough. But the rocks will be hand placed. So essentially, you place the first keystone down along the bed, then you put in the fabric and the large blasted ledge, the angular stone in behind it. Then you place the next rock up on the face, the larger rock again. They're 24-inch angular stones, and then you place the blasted ledge. So none of these are just going to be dumped riprap. You can't build a strong, stable wall by just dumping riprap and hoping that it's going to take. Everything will be constructed. Everything will be placed. And it all starts with the large keystone that you have to bury 2/3 of the dimension, and then you build up from there. So you place a stone, put the material in behind it, place a stone, put the material in behind it to ensure that we're not just dumping rock on the side of the slope out there. I actually had, it's funny you mentioned the paving spec because I asked for a paving spec and a paving detail that showed just that, the center line and fog lines. And this is what I got, quite honestly, which was a stop bar. And we didn't quite make it all the way through to get the fog line and center line. So there is absolutely, I think we've already created it, quite honestly. But there'll be another detail right underneath here that'll call out the paint types and that'll call the center line and the fog lines out for both of those things. So definitely a good eye and glad you noticed it. But we'll have that updated. And along with this bid packet, once we refine it, once we update the notes, there's going to be basically about a 250-page specification booklet that goes out with this. And that covers everything: construction procedures, what happens if things change, how to deal with conflict, how to deal with the contractor that doesn't do things according to the plans. So there's definitely a large 250-page manual that goes out that follows. We use a combination of AIA documents and the EJCDC documents to make sure that we have things official and can keep the contractor on point, if you will, for this project. I think I got all the notes. Did I miss any of them, Julia?
No, I have another question, and that's: are you the town's? Are you the clerk of the works for the town?
Yeah, so we're on board to prepare the bid documents and send it out to the contractors.
And do you supervise construction on behalf of the town?
It depends on if the town wants us to supervise construction. but generally speaking, we would offer to provide that service at a level determined by the town, quite honestly. So what we do with a lot of towns we work with is we get the contract out, we find the bidder, and then we determine what the level of involvement is going to be needed from us, as much as we can bring in testers to test the road material that's going in place. We usually work with a geotechnical engineering firm to do that, test the pavement as it's put in place, and do compaction tests to actually test it in place, and we oversee and all that, and provide either weekly or daily inspections, whatever's needed. And that level of scope is usually determined once we kind of line up with a contractor. Quite honestly, depending on contractors and our familiarity with them, determines the scope and oversight that is recommended at that point in time. But we'll work with the town to determine the level of our involvement that they believe is necessary.
I think that because we've all worked so hard, and you particularly have worked hard to try to peel this project back to a level that works for us all, that we care very deeply that the construction supervision, no matter how it's this is a comment to the board, really, no matter how the board determines to handle it, is sufficient so that there's a high expectation that the follow through will be consistent with what we've all together been pushing for to simplify this project. So I don't know how the town normally handles construction. I do know that things can go awry in the course of construction, and any steps that the town can take to minimize that happening. For example, the contractor, mashing the ledge, um, uh, any steps that the town can take to minimize construction problems, I think would be deeply appreciated by us all.
One of the procedures that I think is important for everybody to hear too is once we go through this bidding process, we find a bidder that the town wants to proceed with, there's a level of value engineering that occurs. And at that point in time, we'll look at their bid prices, we'll look at the project as a whole, and then we'll welcome recommendations from the contractor on how they potentially could save money. You know, as engineers, we like to determine how we think is best, but we don't run the machines, we don't work the earthwork, we're not in there making those the digging, if you will. So we know what works, but there might be a procedure or something that they might see and say, you know what, we could do this and this instead of doing it the way you presented it. And oftentimes you can save a little bit of the overall project cost. So that is part of what will help the town getting the contractor signed up with and getting through that process. But that is part of this process is value engineering. We do that with all our projects.
Value engineering is terrific, but this is one project where we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, and it's the continued supervision and spirit of keeping this project in a good context is what I think we all hope can be assured as we move forward. And just a very last question again on velocity zones and wave action and vegetated solutions. Is something like the lobster pool really a place of major wave action? And is the area where that I keep calling Gene Goodman's cattails, that marshy area just by the bridge, is that really? I mean, I have never been here in a severe winter storm, but neither of those places strike me as places where you would develop major wave velocities, even with a 2-foot ocean rise.
So the answer to that question specifically is that's what we're trying to accommodate for, is that ocean rise and then the storm action on top of those sea level rises. So without stabilizing the side slopes of the road, we're basically putting a road out there that as this ocean rises, as the road becomes, as the floodwaters rise, we would get into a situation where it would be susceptible. I mean, here's a picture, what do they say, from 2018, 2019. So you can see that is up into the elevation of this road. I agree the wave action should be cut by the pound in the pond, if you will. But ultimately, as the waters rise up above anything that can stop, and the modeling they're talking about is pretty significant. I mean, you can see these sea level rises long term is up to 13, somewhere in that range on some of these models that they've projected. So what we've tried to do is come up with a practical approach of, okay, we're only going to raise the road 2 to 3 feet. And we didn't come up with that. Let me clarify. That was what was recommended in the Wood report. Raise the road 2 to 3 feet and then stabilize the road base to make sure that it can be inundated, it can receive wave action, which is all critical to obtaining that grant from the agencies, is to make sure that you have a road that'll be stable in the event that it becomes overtopped and the waters rise and the wave action is there. So we've tried to kind of blend everything together without getting too carried away and building this road up 4 or 5 feet in the air.
Okay. Kevin Gordon's been very patient, so
Thank you. Thank
activate
you.
him.
Yeah, thank you, Walter. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, so Julia stole a lot of my thunder because I had some serious concerns about that I think Andrew just addressed with one of the notes on there with regards to that, Andrew, I think you said you would revise the language there, specifically concerning the ledge that sticks out on the access to point view. And when you were going over the plans, you talked about the pipe. And I'm glad to hear that retrofit could be done to actually put the pipe under the road if need be. And then she also addressed my other concern in reading through the plans, because I kept hearing this term blasted ledge, which I think, Andrew, you just clarified. I did, one of the other points that she brought up was, she's referred to it as Gene Goodman's, the wetlands. If we could put that back up, and I understood the picture you just put back up, Andrew, which is if you're looking at the lobster pound is on the left side. I think what Julia was referring to was on the pound area, which is on the right side, and then across the street from that, which is where there is wetland. And I really wonder, even with the rise that's projected, at least for the next, 20, 30 years in that area, whether you couldn't do that with vegetation rather than riprap, rather than ripping all of that natural wetlands out. I guess that was one of my other concerns. And then the other one, we had talked in a meeting back, and I think Julia actually brought this up back then as well. And I may be mistaken, but the bridge that this area connects to, I thought the lanes were, and correct me if I'm wrong, I thought they were 10-foot wide lanes. And we had actually talked about trying to potentially tie that into the road, number one, as a traffic calming, speed reducing, proposal. Julie just talked about the road coming down to, instead of 22, 21 or 20 and a half. And I thought we had a talk about connecting. I thought the width of the lanes on the bridge were 10 feet each, and I could be mistaken. And I thought we had talked about carrying that through the section to potentially try to slow the traffic, which obviously speeds in that area as they're coming off the bridge, coming back up to, to go by the pound, coming off the island. So that was one of my other questions that I had.
Yeah, definitely. I remember talking about that, but I think as far as the road width, to answer that one first, I think what we ended up with, so it looks like based on our survey, the existing road through that area is really close to 22. It ranges from 21 and some change up to 22. The DOT and the road standards want it to be 22. But what we had talked about to do a traffic calming is to be able to paint that sideline and fog line in closer. So we'll have a little bit of a paved shoulder there, and we can pull those fog lines in tighter, potentially as close as 9 feet away, to kind of give you that feeling that you're being squeezed through there anyways.
Okay.
Even though you'll have that extra little bit of pavement on the shoulder there. So I do remember trying to do something with the fog lines and painting rather than trying to squeeze and take that pavement width away through those sections.
Yeah, because I just see that, like, I'm up here, I'm in Maine now at my house, and literally, if you stay in the front yard, I mean, you can hear the traffic come across the bridge, and you don't even hear like any instance of the traffic trying to slow down going by the lobster pound.
Right.
And I think that's one of my biggest concerns is how do we get, I realize there's going to be a little bit more curvature to the road, but how do we get that traffic to slow down more through this section? So again, they're coming down that hill on the island, they're going across the bridge, and they're coming at, it's rare that I see, or hear, I can't see the traffic, but I can hear it. And you can kind of tell the traffic that's going pretty quickly, right? So, and again, I can kind of tell the difference between somebody who's going 25 and somebody who's going 45. And there's more people going 45 or greater than there are 25.
I've kind of grown attached to, I've been using these in a lot of places. Some people hate them, some people love them. but they're flashing speed limit signs.
I know.
And granted, somebody that's going to break the laws anyways is not going to pay attention to those flashing signs, no matter how much they flash at them. But it just gives a visual cue, especially if you can put them in places that they're not looking at people's houses, so people don't have to see them flash.
Right.
You know, you set them up before the project on both sides of the end of here. So as they're coming in through this area that's twisted, you can put some curb signs and a flashing speed limit sign. It's just all LED controlled, and it essentially will flash the speed limit. And some of them you can even flash and tell you the speed limit just to keep people aware of what's going on.
Yeah, and I'm not really thrilled with the concept of seeing a flashing light, but at the
Right.
same time, I think there's such an issue of the speed of the traffic that it was just flashing the actual speed as opposed to something that's really lighting up, a great area around it. I'd probably be more open to that as long as it's not, illuminating a large area, in other words, because obviously that's part of the beauty of this area. You don't want it illuminated at night.
Absolutely.
But to just have the flashing of the actual speed limit, I think would be helpful. Like I said, I remembered that we had talked about the bridge and the lanes on the bridge. And yeah, if you can obviously through paint those lines to try to keep the traffic narrower than the actual pavement, then I'm okay. And I'm interested, Andrew, in your thoughts about those wetlands, because again, it's on the other side of the road right there. If there couldn't be some other vegetation source that could be utilized there, that I think would just be more aesthetically pleasing.
Again, I'll reiterate what I said before with regards to stabilization, the long-term longevity of the water and the floods, whether the flood's coming from one side or the other. That's why we've elected to do a permanent solution with the riprap. If you do vegetation, you can't put it as steep as the riprap. In this area, we're pretty steep with the riprap on the side slopes. So you would end up impacting additional vegetation potentially down through this area, because you put that at 3 or 4 to 1. You taper it down into the wetlands, and then you try to vegetate it and put some fabric in there. Right. It's definitely an option. Again, like I said, I don't believe it's a permanent solution. I'm not sure it meets the full intent of what the other engineers recommended, nor does it meet the full intent of the grant funds that are being provided. Not having those directly in front of me, I suspect that they would much prefer to see a permanent solution with the rock in place. We have definitely done our best to try to minimize. You can see there's the green line right there. So we're only taking a little sliver out of that. We're not blowing up the side of the road here. I probably don't have my scale right here, but I was going to measure the width of that. But we're talking a couple of feet.
It was kind of hard to gauge, Andrew, and that's why, like I said, I was just concerned about losing those wetlands.
Yeah, that's quite a swath of wetlands. They're protected by DEP. They're not just going to let us fill those in without a proper permit. So that's part of our alternative analysis that we have to do for this permitting, is to explain how we're minimizing impacts to those wetlands and why we need to impact them at all. So as you can see, we've kind of tightened the road up to make those requirements occur and be able to stabilize along the edge while minimizing impacts to these wetlands. There's one up in this corner that's we're probably taking the most out of, but it's because it's so close to the edge of the road. It's all wet there anyways, and we need to put some drainage in there to begin with. But that's the biggest corner right here. And then there's a couple of little slivers along the way here. But it's not as much as you may think, because we were able to keep everything within that right of way there. We're coming right down to the edge of it, with some of the drainage just beyond it here.
Okay. And one other question, Andrew, if you want to put this section back up, since I have to obviously access Point View where my property is, in terms of the grade that's going to happen with the access road onto Point View, it's the other, where you were, exactly, right in there. So give me an idea, because that road is being raised up by, you said, approximately 2 feet in that area. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
So you're going to grade. So we're going to be, as you pull in, where right now it's basically level, we're going to be going down for a period of, several, let's just say it's 15 feet or 10 feet or whatever it is.
Yep.
Okay.
It's actually longer than that, and that's why we've done it this way, and that's why we've had to impact so much of this.
Okay.
So basically, we're going to be able to stretch this out. So here's elevation 11. Here's where our proposed elevation 12 is. So you start doing the math somewhere between there, and we're 1 foot and 40 feet.
Right.
So
Okay.
that's a pretty gentle grade through
Okay.
there.
Okay.
And the same is true on the other side. It's much steeper on the other side, but we're still a very gentle, and that's why we had to do this. We're still a gentle transition. We're 1 in 20 feet there, so that's still a 5% slope.
Yeah, because I
So that's
knew
a
where
pretty
you
gentle
have.
transition.
Yeah, I knew where you have 10 there. That's sort of a low point in that turnaround. Okay, got it. Okay, that makes me feel better. I'm good. Thank you, Andrew. Like I said, Julia addressed a number of the issues, so I appreciate your willingness to change some of those notes, and you're also explaining what blasted ledge meant, because
Certainly.
that really threw me. So thank you.
Certainly.
Okay, Chad. You're up.
Okay, let me see if I can get my video up here so everyone can see my it's one of my greatest assets. Hey, and thank you all again very much for taking your time here. Andrew, Hedrick, I appreciate all the work that you put into this and getting us to where we are today. I just have a couple comments, and I'm going to, just like Kevin sort of did, I'm going to pick up on some things that Julia mentioned. And one is primarily, it all pretty much has to do with field changes. So the first issue I'd like to raise is that note on there about where it says that ledge is not going to be blasted or hammered. If we can just put a period after that and have nothing else, what worries me, and I think it was Jan that that was wondering about the mistrust, and for me, mistrust lies in ambiguities. Okay, and we have, anytime there's we won't blast the ledge, but there's an ambiguity and there's some mistrust. And I don't think anyone at this point wants that ledge impacted. Andrew, you mentioned that the drainage really is the only thing that's going to be potentially impacting that ledge out there. But that drainage, the lines that you're proposing to use are flexible. So there really shouldn't be any impact to ledge. I'd love for the board to say, you know what, to direct you, Andrew, and say, please just just leave it at the ledge will not be impacted, period. I
think what I'm going to do is add that simple note into the construction notes. I was looking because I thought we'd had it somewhere else. Again, we're still refining some of these notes, but we can easily do that. And it's going to be very clear that ledge will not be removed for this project. It'll be very clear in there. It'll be very clear in the bid documents. There won't be any questions that they can remove ledge there.
Okay, and I appreciate that. And that's exactly what I know myself and I think pretty much everyone in this community group that we've been discussing wants to hear. I appreciate you saying it, Andrew. I'd love to hear from the board saying the same exact thing. Hey, community, as your elected representatives, we will not be removing or impacting any ledge with this project. I haven't heard that so far. I just heard it from you, Andrew, for the first time, and I appreciate that very much, and we all do. But you're not the one directing this project. So,
that's been my position for several months now. Absolutely no ledge removal with hammers or blasting.
Yeah, mine too, for the record. I mean, I've said the same thing for months now, that we aren't going to take any ledge out.
As did I.
Yeah.
And please excuse me, but I just heard two things. I don't want any ledge taken out, and I heard by blasting or hammering. I think what I certainly want, and I know some of the others want, is just a very unambiguous answer to the question: will ledge be impacted by the construction of this project? And all we're looking for is a no.
Well, I wouldn't say that it might not be impacted. If there's a loose piece there and they can pick it out with a hoe ram or something. I mean, not a hoe ram, an excavator. That's one thing. But I think my position all around is we will not do any ledge removal with pneumatic hammers or blasting. And that's as unambiguous as I can get. I mean, I think that's crystal clear.
And I appreciate that you feel that it's crystal clear. I just, anytime we're even using mechanized equipment, I'm going to go right back to then we should be testing wells out here before we get into commencing this project. That's why because one thing leads to another. If we're going to impact the ledge out there, and look, I get it. If a piece of ledge crumbles off and someone's got to pick it up with a shovel, great. Everyone understands that. But you start using mechanical equipment, you start using a track hoe or a backhoe to start pulling that, pulling ledge out. That's when our aquifer can start to be impacted, and that's what I am certainly worried about. And I know several of the other folks that have wells around here are worried about. And that's why we're just simply looking for. We're looking for put an end to that ambiguity. And if the question arises, well, you seem like you're trying to pin us down, and we are, and because that's primarily, I think that's been one of our primary issues is this ledge. And if we can, from my perspective, if we can narrow that down to just, if they can't use it, if they can't remove it by using hand tools, don't remove it. There'll be no ledge removed.
There's a lot of ledge in this coastal area that we call rotted ledge, and it's shale and it's broken pieces, and it starts with that dark brown stuff, which is what's exposed there, quite honestly. So I believe that the whole use of the word hammering and blasting should eliminate you're not going to bang on these. An excavator can bang on pieces of ledge to try to break them off and remove them. But because we're not calling out a specific hammer, I think that'll be very clear. We'll make it very clear in the specs. We'll make it very clear on the plan that that's not the intent. But I would hate to prevent a contractor from picking up some rock that might look like ledge that's in the ground that can just be scooped out and put in the back of a truck and hauled off site there. So I just would be afraid as an engineer trying to work with a contractor to tell them that, no, you can't pick up that ledge with your machine, and here it says in the specs, or you could be sued or challenged because of that. So I think if we eliminate the hammering of ledge and allow them to simply scoop up pieces of rock that might have broken off from the ledge or shaly stuff that's not creating any pressure in the ground, I don't think there should be any concern with that.
And Andrew, what you just explained, I don't have a problem with that, as long as it's worded that way, and as long as the contractors are kept to that, right? Because I agree, if it's loose or it's shaly and they happen to, they can use a bucket to go pick it up, that's fine. If it's attached, that's I think where we're all going to run into problems. So if that note is on the plans and the board is fine making sure that note's on those plans, then I, for one, as an individual, I'm good with that. I also worry about who is going to be in charge of making recommending these field changes. If something is encountered in the field, if there's a question, for instance, about whether ledge is detached or whether it's shaly and whether they can use some type of mechanized equipment to remove it, who makes that call? Who's going to go out in the field and say, yes, go ahead and do that?
Well, I think that's why Andrew's original note was to contact the engineer, but you suggested just put period. I liked his first idea much better.
Well, we're talking about a field change, so if
I know, but
Right.
he proposed originally, correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, that what you wanted to do was swap that second sentence for contact the engineer.
Engineer or town representative is what we usually put.
Right, and I think that's the best solution. And that's fairly typical from what I've experienced in construction projects.
it just depends, honestly, it depends who that contact person is. So, if it's someone that's extremely sensitive to this particular issue, it's someone that's extremely knowledgeable about this type of construction and these types of field changes and impacts to nearby wells, then that's great. I'm just not sure we're going to get that. I'm not sure we're going to get that person. I don't know who, Andrew, it is. That would be from your firm if you guys are going to be overseeing this project.
It would be me directly.
And aren't you the guy that proposed removing all that ledge by blasting in the first place?
I am absolutely. But I've heard what the town has said. I understand your concerns as well as others. And we've made that determination that ledge is not going to be removed. So as the engineer overseeing the construction of the project, if the contractor calls me and says, hey, I want to remove some ledge, we're gonna say, no, plain and simple. The town's already secured us to do some general oversight for construction. That was part of our original contract. So we're gonna help them through that. And beyond that, we put it in the specs, we put it on the plans that no equipment's gonna be used to hammer away at ledge. I don't know what more to tell you. It's like you can put up all the speed limit signs you want, but if somebody's not following the speed limit, you know, there's nothing there. But we can direct the contractor, we can put restrictions in the contract, we can put penalties in the contract, we can do whatever we need to do, but generally speaking, we can hold them accountable for all of that, especially if they understand what's going on here and realize that if ledge or hammering happens, that you're going to be going after them and not the town.
Well, I'm not sure we're going to be going after just them and not the town, but they'll be, you know, that's what we want to avoid, right? If we can avoid impacting this ledge, we're going to avoid any type of problems, which is exactly, that's what I'm trying to get at is let's avoid touching that ledge. We can avoid problems with the wells and no one's going to get sued. Okay.
Personal, I'd be in favor of penalties. Because I think that really sends a message.
Yeah, and it's just it'll be what the language, you know, what the language will be in that
Yeah.
contract. What those
Right, right. I'm not can't wordsmith it here tonight, but I would personally support penalties for violation of that clause, of that prohibition.
And I appreciate it. I think that's great. I think that's
I
great.
think that's a great idea.
Here's there's another question I have too, and that is relative to the timing of the project. I don't think we've talked about that tonight. I know we've talked about it in previous meetings where there was some, I believe it was, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was the board who mentioned that they didn't want to see construction on this project. And I know I'm just paraphrasing here, but it was between, you know, so I think it was kind of like June 1st to November 1st. You know, basically during the summer, fall months, where all the, you know, where the businesses on Spruce Head Island are open for the most part. Is that something that we're still discussing about the timing?
Well, I think we're going to be forced into that timing, even if we didn't want to. I never considered November. I always considered October.
Yes, I say November to June 1st to November 1st, I guess would be what I would see as the time that we probably wouldn't want to do that project.
Yeah.
You know, I was in Camden today and thinking, you know, they've got all their streets torn up. Then I'm thinking to myself, why don't they have a prohibition against construction in the summertime? Okay,
Our
so
goal is the shoulder seasons clearly, but we've also got to have enough warmth to do paving and painting. So that can be an issue at the end of the project. So
Yeah, the paving plants close in Maine fairly early, so
we're going to try hard to avoid the peak summer months, though, that's for sure.
we don't want to go through a winter with that not paved, at least a base coat.
absolutely, and that's the other question is how, you know, what's the current project timing for this?
Well, personally, I think we need to discuss that in light of the budget issues, but.
Yeah, I don't think we know the answer yet because we haven't got to an RFP or a bid yet. So it's too early to tell you, Chad.
Okay, I accept that answer. I want to sort of keep that in our collective minds is when this construction is going to happen, and
We're 3 to 4 months away from obtaining a permit from DEP to allow us to do any of this work.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, that's probably about right.
I'm going to throw it out right now. I think I'm beginning to think, given our budget issues and the late date, we're looking at next year.
Oh yeah, I think we're looking at next spring at the earliest.
Yeah. And, you know, and I know before this, we were looking at trying to get it done this year, but, you know, that I think that timeline has just evaporated. I mean, we're going to have to plug a budget hole here somehow, and we're going to need some time to do that.
Yeah, and I guess we're fortunate in two things, right? One is that the tide's not running, the sea level is not rising that quickly, so we have a little bit of time, and I think we're all on board. It's happening. We need to raise this road. And I guess we're fortunate that we've been able to whittle this project down to what it's become versus, you know, sort of what it was. You know, with all that blasting and the length of the road, it would have been, I think the budget by the time it would have gotten around to bidding would have been a heck of a lot more than it is now. So that's maybe that's a little bit of fortunate. Anyway, I think my issues have been addressed. So thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
All right, Andrew, you're going to wear your arm out. You should learn how to use the yellow video hand.
Am I all right?
Now you're unmuted and ready to go.
Okay, I just have a couple of comments and then one question for Andrew. And Dan was talking about not wanting to derail. I don't think anybody wants to derail this project. I think this is an excellent project in terms of the way it was conceived and why it was conceived. I think we're all concerned with storms, sea level rise, and we have no problem with that. I think the problem that many members of the community had has been pretty well beat to death. We know that nobody wanted blasting. Many of the problems have been eliminated from the original drawings, but I just wanted to make one more comment about that, and that is, had we not had all those problems in the original drawings, I think we wouldn't be talking about going over budget. So just a reminder. Now, a question to Andrew. Going back, if you wouldn't mind, to the Pound Goodman area. Okay. There have been a number of comments about that. And my concern is that, and I'll put it into two questions. One is, do you know where the water is coming from that supplies the Phragmites growth in the wetland? And B, is that water coming in from just one side, or is it also coming in through the pound and going under the road? If that is the case, what are you going to do in both cases? What are you going to do to keep the road from being undermined? Can't hear you.
You're muted, Andrew.
Sorry about that. I'm not sure the source of the wetlands. A lot of times the wetlands are there because they're flat and vegetation creates them and prevents an outlet for the water to go, and it simply ponds there. If it is under the road structure, which we've anticipated, quite honestly, because we don't have the typical ditching, we don't have the typical drainage through there, but we are proposing this purple layer right here is a geotextile fabric. So we're going to grind that entire road system up, leave that material in place. We're going to lay down a geotechnical fabric that'll be open. We're going to place new road, and then we're going to wrap that fabric up in there. So in the event that we have water seepage that's running from either side to the other, or from floodwaters, that road base will be prevented from being undermined. And the fabric we're using now we're recommending is this Mirify HP 270, and you can. It's a plasticky fabric, basically, that will prevent the material from migrating, but it's porous enough to allow water to flow through it pretty rapidly, quite honestly. So it's a great fabric for this. It'll hold the road together and prevent everything from escaping while still providing the protection we need there.
I'm not concerned about the fabric. Sounds great, but the thing is, if you've got a lot of 18-wheelers loaded with lobster going across, you've got a tremendous amount of weight. And if the water is seeping under the fabric, it's going to move. And so I'm very concerned about that. And I'm trying to figure out how you guys are going to keep it from sinking. And if there's anything planned to put under the cloth material.
Yeah, there is no plan, and that fabric we successfully place in wetlands directly. In fact, anytime we build a road, we put this fabric down or a similar type of fabric down, and build the road right through or right over the wetlands in a case where we have to go through a wetlands. You can place this material directly on clay, and then build your road base up from there, and it'll be stable enough to prevent it from moving, and then you can actually pave over that road, and the road will not move around. The fabric is an equivalency of basically adding a foot of gravel to the road base, but in addition to that, it prevents that migration. So it's not the water that's moving through the soil that's causing the problem. It's the migrating of the fines leaving the soil or going into the soil. So the fabric prevents the fines from leaving, and it prevents the fines from the clays from pushing up into it. So water can come and go as it pleases, but as long as that material is not moving around, you won't get that sinking and the settling and the disruption you're thinking of when you have the soft soil conditions underneath.
Okay, thank you very much, and I appreciate being allowed to speak.
Certainly.
Okay. John wants to come back. Or did you not withdraw your hand from before?
I withdrew, and Walter, and I do have one final question, and it's really unrelated to the drawings. I appreciate Andrew's demonstration tonight and explanations, and I think they're adequate in many ways. I am reminded that we're building a dam across the causeway. We are raising this 2 feet, and there's a hydrological reaction that, and I'm asking Andrew, does he know?
Uh,
I think you froze, John.
And the village. And will any of those properties be negatively impacted by these dams?
You froze up about halfway through that
Okay.
conversation, right where you were getting to the point of the question there.
Okay.
It froze.
My question.
Second time through, it'll be easier. The Whiskey Flat area right before the village is the low level area. I do not know the elevation, but we are damming water, many acre feet of water behind this elevation change. And will it impact those properties?
The answer is no. So we're not ponding, my Google Earth closed, but we're not ponding water in any one of these locations. So in the event where we have a flood, the waters will come up and over, and then it can leave into Seal Harbor or retreat back to the ocean on this side. So there's no, and here's a good picture right here. You can see there's no place to actually dam the water. In this location, we have the same thing. All the water has been set up. So if we do get a flood situation and water comes up into these areas, it's going to retreat back through the pound, and it's going to retreat down through this area. And we put drainage provisions in to help convey that water down through this section. So along the pound area, we're actually not building this road up here, nor are we building the road up here. We're only building it up through this section, and we have provisions in there to allow us to adequately drain the water away from this road to ensure that we're not ponding the water up. The same is true down in here. We're putting a nice clean outlet in to be able to discharge the water.
That
as it
will not
retreats, it'll be able
discharge
to drain
acre
out.
feet of water, Andrew. No way. Acres and acres, 2 foot times however many acres are opposite Spruce Head Marine.
So I guess you got to educate me a little bit more as far as where's the water that you're worried about?
It'll be from the northeast wind blowing onto Spruce Head Marine and piling up behind no, not at that elevation, behind Halls Point, between Halls Point and Spruce Head Marine. Right, Halls Point to the north of Halls Point.
The other one, up by the
Right
intersection.
here. Here's Halls Point. Yes, correct.
To the north and east.
Yep. So this is all wet here
Yeah.
as it is, and the water flows back out to the ocean.
All wet. It's
it flows against, I don't know how it flows, but you have raised the level of that area by 2 feet.
Yeah, so this is the high point now, so it's gonna push the water back to the ocean on both sides. So we haven't ponded anything up. It's the ocean's a low spot still.
The wind and the wave action ponds the water to high elevations to 13 feet. And I'm asking if the houses along Whiskey Flats between Waterman Beach are above or below 13 feet.
Yeah, look at, here's the existing conditions plan here. Right, oh, there we go, right here. So you can see how rapidly the elevations come up. So here's the first Halls Point Road. I love PDFs. Just one second.
That's why we should be in person.
Right there. There's Halls Point Road. Halls Point is at elevation 18, and then tapers down into there. So there's elevation 13 in that location. So in the event that we have water at elevation 13, yes, there will be water up in those areas, but the entire point's probably going to be flooded at that point in time, unfortunately. But we're not ponding any water. That'll simply be the ocean that's rising. We're not storing any water anywhere on these
You
plans.
are creating a dam that will hold wind and wave action and impact Spruce Head Marine, for example, and the properties along Island Road to the northeast. And I'm asking if you know what the elevation of those properties are.
John, along Spruce Head Road.
Spruce Head Road, sorry.
So Knights Marine, or this one right here, is at elevation 14 is where my cursor is. The pier looks like it's at elevation 12 or 13. So that's below this elevation we're talking about to begin with. Right along here, you can see right down here in the bottom corners where the elevations are. You can see as I run through there, that's elevation 19, 16, and then it drops down to this 6-foot elevation down here. And then as we go out further, here's elevation 0. So I'm not convinced by raising this up is going to impact any of this. Raising this up, if we have flood waters that truly overtop this road at elevation 13 or 14, they're going to be overtopping the end of this pier. It's going to be up in here anyways, and we can't control the ocean on that side of things.
But Andrew, I'm talking about elevation 12, where you have dammed it.
Yes.
To elevation 12, and I'm asking if Spruce Head Road properties, there's some very nice oceanfront homes there at low elevations.
What I'm trying to tell you is that if we're at elevation 12 with water, it's going to be at elevation 12 over here as well. So the whole thing, the water itself is going to act as a dam. This road is not going to impact that water elevation. If we're truly in a flood situation, if we're truly in elevation 13 or 14 water, the water is going to be 14 here, it's going to be 14 here, it's going to be 14 over here.
I'm talking about elevation, a wind and wave action can occur at any elevation, and I'm talking about elevation 11.5, where the water will back up into the area in front of Spruce Head Marine and along Spruce Head Road and impact the properties that you're not. Keep going more northerly there, right along in there, further north.
Right, I understand. I understand what you're saying. Those are already in the flood zone as it is. Plain and simple.
Atwoods and the Spruce Head Co-op, right?
They're already in the flood zone.
I understand.
So what's the grant for?
So
you are potentially exacerbating their condition.
I'm not sure I am. I'll leave you with that. I'm not sure how by placing a road and having water overtop the road and being so high that it's flooded both sides of the road would impact that their situation. It's unfortunate that they're in the flood zone, plain and simple. I believe the flood is right here. What do we have it labeled at? Elevation 14. So there's the AE flood zone right there, the VE flood zone. So we're at elevation 14 in that location anyways, as it is. So what we're proposing is lower than the existing flood zone. And I'm just not convinced that, that we would actually, by placing the road in this location, if the water actually rose to a high enough level at elevation 12 or 13, that we would impact this more than the ocean and the current waves would do that. We're not
Andrew, you
ponding
did
water, we're
not-
not storing water. I understand what
did
you're saying,
not
that a
hear
wave
my
would potentially
question.
come in here and hit the rock wall and slide down in one way or the other, but let's face it, if we're at elevation 12, it's not gonna be the cause of this dam here.
My question was elevation 11 and a half storm, 11 and 3/4. So you are damming from what was able to be overtopped at 9 feet is no longer possible. It's no longer possible to equalize between over the road. It will be dammed and it will affect the properties to the north in an
So-
adverse way.
So for clarity, this is elevation 12, right here.
Yeah, and I'm asking you what the elevation of the properties north of there
This is elevation 12 as well, right here.
Andrew, north
is-
of Spruce Head Marine,
Yep.
way north.
Whiskey flat.
What
Whiskey
I'm
Flat.
what I'm
Waterman
losing
Beach
is how
Road.
this would impact these properties over here.
Wind and wave action. I'm not a hydrologist and I guess neither are you.
No, no. So
But
we-
it's a pretty basic condition that we're creating.
so this is what I'm confused about. So here's elevation 11.
Mhm.
As we go back that line, we're constantly growing up across that property there. So I'm not sure how this elevation, like we talked about at elevation 12, 11 and a half, is going to impact this up in this location. I don't see
May
it.
not, but what about Evergreen Road and Cottage Lane and those properties to the north, Camp Road? What are the elevation of those properties?
Those are this property is at elevation 25. This property is elevation 15. This one's at 27. You want me to go on?
No, you've answered the question. Thank you. You could discuss Atwood Lobster.
That's not a part of this project.
They're
Nor
at elevation 5.
No, no.
I think you're a little off on that, but
Well, the parking's at 9 here, and I think what happens is Google Earth kind of ties in between here and wraps around there. So they're at about elevation 9, though, based on our plans.
okay, they'll be completely flooded out, correct?
Yes, when the ocean rises, yes.
Okay.
As
thank
shown
you.
in that picture from Wood, yes.
Thank you.
Boy, John, last time I'm going to give you the last laugh, I'll tell you.
Okay, Walter, thank you, though. I appreciate it.
Oh, Julia, something inspired you, huh?
You're muted, Julia. You're muted.
Still muted.
You're still muted.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
You are now.
Okay, I apologize. Could the board somehow let us know prior to this going to bid how construction management is going to be handled?
I suppose,
I don't
if
think.
I understand the question correctly.
I don't think we can tell you until after it's gone to bid and we understand the bid and the discussion between the contractor and the engineer.
So just for clarity, if I can add, we have been secured by the town to provide a limited number of inspections to help secure the contract and to make sure that we have everything in line. So we have a specific number of site inspections kind of called out. It's basically the general overview, if you will, for the original construction administration. So we have bid administration, contract management, which is a value engineering component, and we have some minimal construction oversight that we've included for site visits. And then beyond that, I think at that point in time, once we have a contractor lined up, then the town can determine, okay, here's what you want for construction oversight. How much testing do we want to do, materials, How much oversight do we want of the engineer? Is the town going to handle that independently? So I think we have us covered all the way up to get things going, to get the contractor secured. And then at that point in time, once the contractor is secured, then we can make a determination on material testing and construction oversight. We always include that in the contract to let the contractor know that there will be oversight, there will be testing. And we basically put all the costs that'll be carried for that back on the town, so that the town can run that contract independently and make a determination on how much they're actually going to do for that.
Okay, so I don't know procedures in Maine. Do you review their billings and quantities, all that sort of thing?
It's one of those levels of service. We do that sometimes and sometimes we don't. A lot of time in the towns, it depends on their administrator and who's capable to go through that. Often what happens to save town money is that we'll get copied on the invoices from the contractor, and I won't review them until I'm asked by the town. If the town sees a pay rec come in from the contractor, they'll review it, and if it's all in line, then they approve it. And they only ask me if there's a question or if they think they can. We have managed projects where we actually signed the pay rec that came from the contractor, where we review it, we review the quantity of work, and we sign it, and then we send it back. But it's not often necessary. This isn't, believe it or not, it's not a large enough project to worry too much about the pay recs. It should be easy enough for the town to kind of keep track of those things, but we're glad to do it and help out and review those things if needed. There is in part of the contracts we do is we hold back the money so they don't get paid 100% every time, and we can change that number based on what the town wants. So when they submit a pay rec for their work, they only get paid for 90% of it until the very end of the construction. So you're always holding back 10% as a price in your project, so you don't give the contractor all their money. And that's holding back money that they've completed. They don't get paid up front for anything. They do the project, they move forward, and then you pay them 90% each time. And again, that can be changed based on what the town wants to see.
So I asked the question only because the town has a relatively small staff, and this may be one of the larger capital projects that the town has ever done, maybe? I don't know. But if we could be made aware of how that's going to be handled, that would be very helpful.
We'll definitely go through that. We'll wrap that into that construction oversight component once we find the contractor. If it's somebody that we're familiar with and that the town's worked with and that we work with regularly, somebody local more or less, honestly, it'll change the required oversight because we have strong working relationships with a lot of the contractors in the area. I'm not suggesting that they get away with more stuff. It's just we have a working relationship, and we understand and we know, and we're confident they're going to call us when something comes up, and we have an open phone call. You know, I'm constantly texting and emailing and talking to local contractors about things that come up to basically keep down on oversight costs and to make things minimal for the town. But we will go through all of that once we get to that point in time.
I think it's for everybody to understand, though, that in the current budget, there is no funds for a clerk of works or a construction manager at all. And so the only oversight that we have that I'm aware of that we currently are going to be able to do is any personal oversight that the town administrator or the board members could do, or the limited amount that's in the current contract with Andrew, or not with Andrew, but with Garland and Dorsey. I just want to be upfront about that.
Well, I think the town may want to think about that.
I agree, but that would be additional funding, and we're already short based on the current estimate.
Some of the other ways that we've done this is we've forced the contractor to carry contingency in their bid price, so that say you carry $10,000 for geotechnical oversight and investigations, and you put that as a line item in the number. Granted, that doesn't change their bid price. It's just $10,000 more or whatever that number is that we carry in there, but at least there's a line item put in their bid And then you can kind of work from there, that it gives the town the ability to secure additional oversight if some's needed, or do some geotechnical testing on the material that they're bringing in. So we can definitely, and we recommend that often, to carry a line item for that oversight in the actual bid process.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have two other agenda items to cover. There is a comment on next steps, and my feeling about discussion of next steps, especially with regards to the numbers, because I got them and I sent them to you guys, but I haven't read them myself because I've been out of pocket. So to me, that's a subject for next Tuesday. Is that okay with you, John and Jan?
Well, I'd like to talk a little bit about it. I mean, I think we got an issue here. We're $27,000 short, and we've completely blown through our general contingency. And I'm wondering if we need to put this on pause. If we're not capable of raising this additional money, do we want to keep spending money? I'd like us to do a little investigation with Northern Borders. If we pull out of this, if we have to, are we on the hook for what we spent? And I think we have some issues here. I also talked to a VP of a large local contracting firm located in Rockland that I know very well, who does their bidding. And he's of the opinion we shouldn't be bidding this at all this summer, that the prices are crazy, labor is short, and we'd be much better off to bid this in January or February. And that would give us some time to see if we can close this funding gap. If I did my math right, we're $27,000 short, and that doesn't include, based on Andrew's last estimate and based on all the money that we had to spend for the, all these revamping and revisions and these additional meetings that we just dealt with the other night with the change order. And that doesn't include any construction supervision that people talked about tonight. So I think we need to have Terry have a conversation with Northern Borders or someone. And we need to start looking at additional funding sources. And I think, personally, I think we need to put this on hold.
And do we have to do that tonight? I mean, you're asking me to comment on figures that I have not digested.
Well, actually, I'm not asking you to comment on the figures. I just feel that this needs to be said tonight with this group present, is all I'm saying.
Okay, that's fair.
And I think that, we've somehow got to figure out how we're going to make this work. Now, I did hear some things tonight from Andrew about value engineering. Value engineering to me is a euphemism for what can we cut out of this project. But I want everyone to know where we stand right now financially. And I think we've got a lot of research to do. And I'm curious if we should vote tonight to put this on a pause, because we're getting deeper and deeper.
Yeah,
Jan.
I think we're premature to do that. We've got some funding coming to the town. It's for another, well, it's coming. It's for another discussion on how we spend it. I understand that. It's okay. I think your point's well made, John, that there's still, there's more money coming. The longer we wait, the cost of materials has gone up. The more meetings we've held, the more revisions we've done, the cost of engineering has gone up. That's not going to get any better by waiting longer, I don't think.
Well, that's not the conversation I had today with this person from the general contractor.
Unless you're talking about waiting years. I mean, I don't think the difference between now and January is going to be significant.
Well, he thought that he disagrees with you. He thought that the bidding environment might be much better for next summer.
Okay.
Bidding it later, but
I would defer to Andrew's opinion on that. I really don't know, but I think, I mean, I hear you, and it won't be my decision. I understand that too. But I do think that there's funding sources out there that we could explore for this.
well, I do too. But my point is, we want to keep spending money.
How much money are we going to spend between now and Tuesday?
Well, not much between now and Tuesday.
That's my point is, let's put this discussion on the agenda for next Tuesday's meeting and delve into it in more detail. Then you're out ahead of us with some conversations and the fact that you've had the numbers 24 hours longer than I have.
And the meeting's actually, I think, next Thursday that you're
Or
referring to.
Thursday, right, the 10th.
Okay, well, I'd be curious to hear what Andrew has to say about the bidding, though. I mean, but okay, if you want to delay it till next, I'm fine. But
Okay, so what is certification of the warrants? Of the ordinances, rather.
Well, I think we voted on 3 of them, right? We voted on the municipal planning board, the addressing ordinance, and the conservation commission. Those were all approved on the 25th of May meeting. So I think we're down to the solar amendment ordinance that needed to be approved. If my notes are correct. And then the 2 land use ordinance and the shoreland zoning ordinance changes.
I thought we had a total of 3 left.
Yeah, that's 3.
That's 3.
Oh, I thought, it sounded like you said 4. Yeah, Terry hadn't sent them to us at the last minute meeting, so we couldn't certify them, but we now have had them for a week or so. So I'm prepared to make a motion that we certify the proposed amendments to the shoreline zoning ordinance as a true copy.
Is there a second?
Second, yeah.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Jan,
Audio aye.
John,
Beer, aye?
Walter, aye. And we're going to approve the warrant that we just got today.
No, we got 2 more ordinances to do.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'll make a motion that we approve the proposed amendments to the land use ordinance as a true copy.
I second the motion.
Any discussion?
Certify, I guess, is what the motion.
Certified.
Right.
Hearing none. John,
Aye?
Jan,
Audio aye.
Walter, aye.
I make a motion that we approve the solar system amendments to the land use ordinance as a true copy.
And I second the motion.
So I don't have this in front of me. Is this where it's not part of the land use
No, it would be part. It
standalone?
would be. It would be part,
Okay.
based on Kristen's recommendation. But there'd be 2 different votes on it. So if one fails, it doesn't kill, it
That's-
doesn't
okay.
drag the other one down. Right.
That's the
Separate amendment.
tightrope act that I was trying to get my hands around. Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Jan,
Audio aye.
John,
Aye?
writes aye. Okay, the warrant itself.
Make a motion that we execute the warrant as presented to the meeting, which includes articles number 1 through, help me, Terry,
36.
36. So that includes the 2 additional articles at the end regarding broadband.
Correct.
I had one, just so you know, I had one typo that Terry corrected in Article 35, which on your copies, in the 3rd line of Article 35, where it says, starts with may also execute the interlocal agree. We changed agree to agreement. And she did that on my copy today. And but with that amendment, I second the motion.
Well, actually, I also sent in a note to Terry that the date on the last line is wrong, and I think she changed that. It said given under our hands May 25th. It's now going to be given under our hands June 1st.
Yep.
I have a, so the beat at the town meeting is going to be all the appropriations are going to be taken, voted on, and assume that things go the way they almost always go. They all get approved. And then we ask the town to raise the, to exceed the levy limit, which they've already done by voting for the budget. It's kind of weird.
It's the law.
I know.
You're talking about the order of the articles?
Yeah. And of course, that's the article that we always say, don't pass it. And this time we're going to say, you must pass it. So anyhow.
But you wouldn't know if you've exceeded it until you vote on your budget article.
Well, yeah. All right. We can discuss this at the meeting on Thursday. All in favor, John,
Aye.
Jan,
Aye.
Walter, aye. So this can be signed as early as tomorrow and then posted. Is that how we're looking at that?
Yes, and David Matucci would like a copy too, as soon as.
Right. Do we want to ask him to attend the next Thursday's meeting, or do you want me to talk to him?
I would prefer the board as a whole talk to him.
Okay. Terry, would you see if you can get him on board for our next meeting?
Yep.
Thank you.
Walter, could I ask though that in deference to him, since we only pay him $50, that when he appears, are we meeting Zoom?
No, we don't have to. But he's
Oh,
gonna
boy,
be.
I hate to ask him to drive all the way down from Washington to.
All right.
Perhaps could he join us on Zoom?
Yeah, it's a little dicey, but
Is it?
we can do it. I'm
You're
just
talking
trying
about
to
the
think.
meeting on the 10th, right?
What
Yeah,
about,
so if
he-
we're all sitting here, by the way, I'm in the community room, my undisclosed location.
how'd you get the water behind you?
That background is me looking out of my kitchen window.
That's Zoom.
You can see Hewitt over there and Spruce Head over there. So I'm feeling like I'm at home, but I'm not. Yeah,
What about if we set up a meeting to interview the CEO, could we perhaps, if he works in Thomaston, perhaps we could piggyback that. He could shoot over from Thomaston or something. Perhaps, I don't know.
yeah, and if we do that meeting in the community room, we can Zoom David in from here.
Oh, okay. Either, and that he could be the home or in Thomaston, probably.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll be all squeezed together because what we don't want to do is have 3 side by sides laptops, because you're going to get contention, as we found out the last time we tried to do that.
Right. That was a disaster.
Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Is that all we needed to do?
Lynn has her hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, especially since it's Jan's last meeting with us, I really did want to express my appreciation, and I think I'm speaking for a lot of us, for the who have keep coming in for this Island Road project. It's been really heartening from my perspective to see you guys work with us on this, and I really appreciate it. I mean, we started off with the road being straightened so people could go faster and blasting the ledge and everything else, and I really did did want to say that we really do appreciate your listening to us and working with us on this too. And my concern has been, and I know Julia brought this up and Chad brought it up as well, it's that, we will not blast unless. And so thank you for addressing that language, because that really alleviates all of my concerns on this project too. So again, I just wanted to express my appreciation for all your work on this. I know, it hasn't been easy, but I'm really happy looking back at the past few months at the progress and the direction that this has gone in. So just wanted to say thank you.
Thanks. Thanks to
Thank
you
you.
for joining the tech committee.
Oh, you're welcome. Different kind of,
You'll
different
you'll be
infrastructure.
doing more Zoom meetings in the future than we will, I think.
Thank you, Lynn.
Welcome. And thank you, and enjoy your time not being on these Zoom calls. See you in the community.
Anything else? Now, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
John?
Hang on one second. I thought we had one other thing we needed to do, but I guess I can't find my agenda, so.
Nothing else on the agenda other than
Okay.
we were
All
going
right.
to talk about future steps, and we deferred that till the 10th.
And Terry's gonna try to schedule a meeting for the interview with the CEO.
You're gonna send me dates that you're available, correct?
Ah, okay. That's what I was thinking of. Okay. I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Jan?
Audio aye.
John?
Aye.
Walter, aye. Thank you, everybody, so much. This was quite productive and serene and calm, and I appreciate that. So, bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
Theo, do you have 1 second? You got,
Yes, I do. Definitely.
I saw you got that information on that grant that I sent you? Okay, I didn't know whether you'd heard about it or not, so I just sent it to you and figured it was better to hear about it twice than not at all.
I had not, and I also sent you some stuff this afternoon. There are 2 grants. There's that one, but there's also one that DEP has got. So that was just awesome. So
Okay.
I sent you
All
some emails today. You probably haven't seen them yet.
No, actually, I've been kind of focusing on getting ready for tonight, so.
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
it looks really
All right.
good.
All right, well, if I see anything, I'll send it your way. Like I say, I think it's better to get notified twice than not at all, so.
Absolutely, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, bye.